Hi everyone, Larry Bailey here with Mortgage Workflow Partners bringing you another weekly market update. This one happens to cover the week of April 14th, 2025 in review. Gang, we've had a lot of stuff happen this year. Obviously, the tariff uncertainty is impacting builders and retailers. We had Fed Chair Jerome Powell warning of a possible, quote, challenging scenario, close quote, on the horizon. Meanwhile, retail sales in March saw a boost from consumers making purchases before the tariffs took effect. At the same time, we saw home builders remaining cautious amid ongoing economic uncertainty. Here's the stories we're covering in this week's review. First story is Powell signals inflation is more important than labor. Remember, they have a dual impact. The next story is retail sales surge in March ahead of tariffs, people stockpiling, something I haven't heard really since COVID, where people are stockpiling because of something that is out of their control, so they're trying to retain control of prices. Next story is economic uncertainty dampening home builder sentiment. That's followed by the story about housing starts seeing their largest decline in a year. We're going to follow that story up with initial jobless claims being the lowest since February. We've got a family hack of the week to share with you, and then we've got what to look for this week in coming up. If you're listening to me on podcast, thank you very much. If you'd like to see this full video, please head over to masteringsencompass.com. If you don't have an account, sign up. It's free. It's open to anyone who wants to join. And let's get into these stories. The first one is Powell signals inflation is more important than labor. In his recent Economic Club of Chicago speech, the Fed Chair Jerome Powell highlighted a potential conflict between the Federal Reserve's dual mandates, right? He made it clear that while both price stability and maximum employment matter, they might pull policy in opposite directions, especially as new tariffs create uncertainty for both inflation and growth. It's important to note that when inflation rises, the Fed typically maintains or increases rates to control that spending. Conversely, economic slowdowns usually prompt rate cuts to stimulate activity. Remember that when the Fed was adjusting rates, they're changing the Fed funds rate. That's the overnight rate of lending between the banks. This benchmark influences all other interest rates, though it does not determine directly mortgage or long-term rates. So what we see in this story is Powell emphasizing that, quote, without price stability, we cannot achieve long periods of strong labor conditions that benefit all Americans, close quote. He indicated that the Fed will, open quote, wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance, close quote. It's important. Let's watch for the Fed to closely analyze the upcoming inflation and employment reports as they make their monetary policy decisions. Next story, retail sales surge in March ahead of tariffs. So we saw retail sales increase 1.4% in March, significantly outpacing February's modest 0.2% gain and making the largest monthly rise in over 2 years. This growth was widespread, with 11 out of 13 retail categories showing an improvement. A substantial 5.3% jump in auto purchases led the way, likely driven by consumers rushing to buy vehicles before new auto tariffs took effect. The, quote, control group, which excludes the volatile categories like auto, gasoline, building materials, and food services, posted a more modest 0.4% increase, falling short of expectations. This figure is particularly important as it feeds directly into the GDP calculations for the first quarter of 2025. The bottom line in this story is that as a critical indicator of consumer spending, retail sales directly impact the overall economic health. While March numbers exceeded forecasts, the surge may represent purchases pulled forward to avoid tariffs, potentially weakening future reports. So we can see like this blip, like, hey, looks great, and then poof, it's not so great. Fed officials will be watching the upcoming retail sales data closely, as consumer spending strength will also influence their decisions on interest rates and monetary policy, because that's what they do at the Fed. All right, next story. Economic uncertainty dampens home builder sentiment. So we see a nice little graph on screen here. Again, hopefully you're watching this on masteringsencompass.com. You can follow along. The home builder confidence inched up slightly this month with the National Association of Home Builders, that's the NAHB, that index rising just 1 point from 39 to in February. I'm sorry, 39 in March to 40 in April. Forgetting what month we're in. This modest gain, however, keeps the sentiment firmly below the critical 50-point mark that separates both growth and contraction. Remember, anything above 50 is growth, anything below 50 is contraction. So when we look deeper at the data, there are three key components: buyer traffic, current sales, and sales expectations. They remain in negative territory, all below 50. The most concerning is the sharp decline in future sales expectations, which dropped 4 points to 43, hitting its lowest mark since November 2023. Bottom line here is, while the NAHB's chair, Buddy Hughes, attributes April's small confidence boost to recent mortgage rate decreases that stimulated some sales activity, the broader outlook, that remains challenging, according to Buddy. Builders continue to exercise caution amid persistent economic uncertainty, new tariffs, and elevated material costs that create ongoing headwinds for the housing market. New construction, at least. All right, next story. Housing starts see largest decline in a year. Guys, this is not good. I don't mean to snicker, but come on. Housing starts plummeted 11.4% in March, marking their steepest drop in a year as builders remain hesitant to begin new projects. Single-family home constructions fell even more dramatically, down 14.2% from February. Meanwhile, building permits increased 1.6%, slightly beating expectations, though many may not materialize due to higher building costs from tariffs. Yeah. Bottom line here is March's housing starts fell to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of just 1.32 million homes, significantly below the 1.8 million average annual household formation seen over the past 5 years. While home completions are running higher at 1.55 million annually, this still falls well short of household demand. This supply-demand imbalance should continue to support home values moving forward. You gotta have someplace to live. Like, you just gotta. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm only snickering back at this story because the absurdity that these tariffs are creating in terms of these home builders. This is my own personal anecdote here, but when you're trying to build a home, like, homes take time to build. I don't care where you're building them. Even if you're in manufactured housing, you're building them in a warehouse somewhere, you still got to buy the material. And so, when you're doing these forecasts and stuff and you're trying to figure out, well, if I build this house, is it worth it? If you can't figure out if it's worth it, you don't do it. Like, why make a bet that could go bad, especially if you're a home builder and you've been straining your cash flow. If your cash flow is being strained, the last thing you do is take a gamble on a potential negative outcome. Not worth it to me as a business owner, and it's not worth it to builders either. These are smart people that understand how much materials can cost, especially if you go into contract now and then you have to buy the materials later. It can be an absolute loser for any home builder. And so I feel for them, but we still have to have housing. So what's the plan? All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Let's get into the next story. Initial jobless claims lowest since February. We see initial jobless claims dropping 9,000 to 215,000, reaching their lowest point since February and staying historically low. Meanwhile, continuing unemployment claims increased by 41,000 to 1.885 million. So here's the summary of this story. New unemployment filings have been subdued in recent weeks, likely because many companies are adopting a cautious, quote, wait and see approach amid economic uncertainty. However, continuing claims have consistently stayed above 1.8 million since last June. It's going to be a year. We're going to blow past this 100% past June. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not going to be. This indicates longer job searches for unemployed workers, with many individuals now exhausting their 26-week benefit period. These persistently high continuing claim numbers are also signaling underlying weaknesses in the labor market and generally slower hiring pace. Yeah. All right, family hack of the week. In celebration of National Picnic Day. Again, there's always a day. So this one's on April 23rd. Consider preparing this Greek pasta salad from Delish for your next picnic as a fulfilling lunch option. This recipe serves 8. You'll see this on screen here. If you're listening on podcast, head to this spot in the video presentation on Mastering Encompass. There you go. All right, what to look for this week? We've got to watch for key housing indicator in March's new home sales report being released Wednesday and the existing home sales figures dropping on Thursday. Also on Thursday's schedule, the latest durable goods orders for March and weekly jobless claims happening also on Thursday. Gang, my name's Larry Bailey. I hope I can help you learn how to be your best and top Encompass administrator. You can leverage the Mastering Encompass for Admins certification and coaching 12-month program. I look forward to seeing you there. You guys have a great week. Catch you on the next one. Bye for now.